A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us for this edition of Spectrum Xtra on Radio 1 FM 90. This being a Friday, we review the major events of the week. But today we'll be looking at the fight against corruption, the latest developments, and the stance of President Yoweri Museveni on the protests that we've seen on Tuesday and just yesterday. I have a panel of four. Let me introduce the Honorable Simon Mulongo, governance and security expert who served as Buhulo East Member of Parliament. He also served as the deputy head of the African Union mission in Somalia. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us, Honorable
Good
Mulongo.
evening, our good listeners, and good evening, my colleagues, the panelists.
Mr. George Musisi, a lawyer. He's a member of the National Unity Platform Party. He's also a pundit on governance and human rights matters. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us, Sebo.
Good evening, listeners. Pleasure to be here. I don't know why you didn't introduce Simon's party. When it comes to me, introduce the
Simon Mulongo is from the NRM, National Resistance Movement Party.
Ruling party.
All right.
Not PLU.
And also in studio, Ms. Charity Kalebo, Executive Director, Election Laws Institute, pundit on governance matters, season election observer. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us, Ms. Charity Kalebo.
A very good evening to all our listeners. Most happy to be here, and a good evening to our panelists.
Mr. Nicholas Opio, team leader at Chapter 4 Uganda, human rights lawyer, pundit on governance matters, is also one of those people who has been keenly following developments, not only here in Uganda, but also abroad. Nicholas Opio, we hope you'll also bring us to speed with what is happening in the U.S. Very interesting times in the U.S. when you look at issues of democracy, things that have left us in some circles wondering what could be happening there, U.S. being one of the countries that we actually look up to.
I'm in the least interested in what is happening in the U.S. I am more interested in the events in my own country and in my own backyard. That preoccupies me more than the theatrics of the U.S. elections. In any event, the U.S. is a very complex state that even the most those who pretend to be sophisticated in this country don't understand the complexity of the governance systems in the U.S., the nature of the federal government and states, the different laws. I was talking to somebody who is higher ups in the judiciary in Uganda who was quoting a decision of the Supreme Court of the state of New York as the decision of the U.S. And when I told him there's a federal appeals court called the U.S. Federal Court, he was surprised. So the U.S. is a complex state, and I'm not preoccupied with it. My preoccupation is Kampala. My preoccupation is Uganda.
But you also tell them not everybody votes in America. That's the nature of democracy.
Oh yeah, I mean they have a different system of elections. It's a college vote. Sorry, it's a delegate.
So look at us where everybody is universal.
No, of course.
I wish you knew where Honorable Mlongo is leading.
No, I know where he's going. Of course, have comparisons, and there is universal suffrage in the U.S. It's just that for the election of a federal president, universal suffrage elects in a state, and the state assigns delegates, and those delegates go and affirm the views of their state. It's very rare that if my state, take for example, if I'm in Baltimore or if I'm in New Jersey, if New Jersey votes and delegates are allocated for the election of the president, that if New Jersey voted blue, and the blue in this case being the Democrats, and red being the Republicans, and they are Greens and many others, but that if the state has assigned delegates based on proportion of the votes that you have received, that they would go to the national election and change that vote. And so that's what Mulongo is saying. That there's no universal suffrage. There is universal suffrage.
The opposition, where you are representing these people in this constituency of Baltimore, and you're supposed to vote for the council here. Now, who represents me who's in opposition?
So in some states, delegates are assigned proportional to the vote. So there are delegates that are going to come. So a candidate, the party might get, if there are 25, like in the state of California, if you're 25 delegates, they divide them according to vote proportions. In some states, it's not divided, but in most cases, you have delegates from the same state representing all the shades of opinion in that state.
All right. Well, it's very complex.
For short election, American politics and history.
Well, it's indeed complex. you hear somebody has won the popular vote, but they have not
Yes.
become the president, and you wonder
Exactly.
what could be going on. But anyway, let's focus on issues Uganda, and we know very well on Tuesday, protests protests to actually promote anti-corruption campaign in this country began on Tuesday. Young people went onto the streets, and a number were arrested, over 100 according to what we know so far, and about 94 were charged in court for unlawful assembly, but also getting involved in what has been called being idle and disorderly. Well, President Yoweri Museveni has spoken about these developments, and he actually says that the protesters had a big agenda beyond what we all know, fighting against corruption. He actually thinks they had a sinister agenda, and that the security agencies were able to actually deal with that in a wider way. He actually says he will be giving another address to the country to explain in detail what could have gone on. But we have heard from human rights defenders, lawyers, and a cross-section of parliamentarians who have actually condemned the security agencies for acting the way we did. Why is the focus on corruption? The young people are saying it's untenable to be losing 10 trillion shillings annually, money that could help address many challenges in this country. And of particular interest, they're pointing fingers at Parliament. And if you might have listened carefully to some of the slogans, they were actually saying the Speaker of Parliament, Anita Mong, must resign. So, gentlemen and lady, let's reflect on these issues. And one of the things people have been talking about after the protest, so what? What is going to change? Because it seems President Yoweri Museveni is stuck with his message that he is the alpha and omega and the fight against corruption, and that whoever has information, evidence, let it be produced to him, and he will deal with it. He actually said the fight against corruption is in his hands, and therefore he's willing to do what he has been pledging, to crush the corrupt. Let me begin with you, Honorable Mulongo, on this particular issue. What's your take? We have been discussing this matter here for quite some time, and I remember not so long ago you did share your views on this issue. But finally, the protests did happen. The police did their best to stop them from happening, but we saw pockets of protesters in different parts of the city.
Well, first of all, the issue of corruption is real and is a cancer that we must fight. And we must fight by every means and by everybody and with every tool necessary. The law is very clear about that. The institutions that are supposed to support and facilitate checking and fighting corruption in place, they may not be very efficient and so on, but definitely the will of government is clear and is real. The issue of the protests recently, just like elsewhere, many times have hidden agenda, and they may not be up for what is on the surface. And that's where governments sometimes react differently, because they have more information than what meets the eye. Like I was telling you here in Kenya, that the protests were neither faceless, nor leaderless, nor formless. Those were well organized and orchestrated protests in Kenya, and were well funded and facilitated. And as such, when you see just the Kenyans who claim to be very spontaneous and organic to themselves, this is not true. Information is coming out clearly to show that they were not. So, equally in Uganda, it's true that there is a serious issue of corruption, and people have pointed these things out. And actually, we do expect Ugandans to continue voicing out against the vice of corruption. But if they have other hidden motive, then it creates issues, because the whole thing is sometimes, I have a lot of support for all those who fight corruption. But when it comes to be embedded with the other agenda, subversive in nature, trying to come up with ideas of destroying, ideas of targeting individuals for reasons other than what is corruption, then we have a problem. The Baganda have the saying of some sort of glimontam. You see, you may want to eat very good food, juicy stuff in the cooking pot, but then there is a snake in it. What do you do? If you hit the pot, then you hit the snake, you'll break the pot, and you lose the food. So in the end, it becomes a dilemma. So these kind of dilemmas, the government, as rational state actors, including the president, has to make a decision. Do we allow these protests? And moreover, the agenda is to really go 4-7 steps more than just what it meets the eye. Or do we have to stop them, but still pursue the agenda of fighting corruption? And this is why it is. So the issue is, yes, we must fight corruption. Yes, corruption is a problem. And yes, we must identify those who are corrupt and deal with them. But corruption is not like somebody stealing chicken around the village and you run across a banana plantation. It is sophisticated. It's about, it nuances the fabric of people's thinking, the giver and the taker. And as such, you have to find a way of doing it more sophisticated way, just like it is sophisticated. It is not about running around the streets. You can run out the streets and condemn and so on and invade parliament and so on, but are you really going to the bottom of the issue of corruption? So I think the methods and the approach by the protesters are not effective. They are passing a message that is well known and clear. They never actually voiced anything in you, because somebody carrying a placard and say Mlongo is a thug because he's corrupt, that does not cure. Because it requires evidence, it requires a process, a due process, and I'm happy to have very critical lawyers here who know that a due process is very fundamental in this case. And I don't expect them to support mob justice in delivery of justice. So I think that the president was right and justified in his message. What we can only urge is that the president should his act, should really put in more effort, so that we reinvigorate the approach to fighting corruption, and then walk the talk. Because recently we're saying, Mr. President, can you walk the talk? When he touched some people rushed around to say, hey, you're going beyond. Why should he even say that people who are, the judiciary should not be too lenient? Why? He's interfering with the judicial process. The same people who were saying, let the president be harsh, let the president come up with a muscle to crack down. But when he cracks the whip, again, people come around to say, hey, you're exceeding your powers.
All right, we'll be coming back to you. Let's hear from you, Mr. George Musisi. Your take, you heard from Honorable Mlongo there. That is his opinion. How about yours?
Of course, Honorable Mlongo is has fundamentally missed the issue about protests and the right to protest. I don't protest because I believe this is the best method. I protest because that's what I think. No one chooses what mode of protest. And when you read the comments from Mr. Museveni, at one point he disagrees. He says that the corruption fight is his, as if it's a personal fight. But we should also not forget that he has been at that for over 20 years. The fight has been in his hands.
But he has also been urging members of the public.
At one point, when he was swearing in for his, I don't remember which term, in 2016, he said, this is Chisanja Hakuna Mchezo on corruption. It was his solo fight. So, from the legal standpoint, for starters, before you go into any other semantics, is that the right to protest peacefully is a constitutionally guaranteed right. And security agencies tend to confuse themselves when they say that, it has a limitation. But the limitation is not at the discretion of each and every individual. The limitation has been set. And that right to protest peacefully, to associate, is one of those that our Constitutional Court has talked about several times, that we don't even need any more clarity as to what the legal standard is. The only question is that it's caught up in politics. If I can ask, even if you look at some of the rebuttals, the first point is that security has got intelligence that some people are planning to hijack it. Just this year or last year, security got intelligence, as per their brief, that there are going to be bombs in Pastor Kayanja's church. Security didn't even stop the service from going on. What it did was to deploy to ensure that, and later on they gave us a presser to say that we've detonated the bombs because we got wind, we didn't stop, we only informed the pastor, and so on and so forth. And the court has said that if you get intelligence, your duty is to deploy, because every every public gathering, there may be people who may come who are not of in the same spirit. Even when people gather at Namugongo to celebrate Martyrs' Day, police gives a report after saying we arrested these and these people. So you cannot say that because there may be some people to hijack it, then you should not do this. Secondly, the other confusion that people take is to say, is this the most effective way? Who decides the most effective? I've chosen, if you understand what a protest is, it's saying, I'm dissatisfied with this.
Well, you should have objectives.
So
and,
if,
at the end of the
yes,
day,
my objective from my point of view is to protest. To protest means I'm not happy, peacefully. And if there at any one point, criminals hijack it, that's when the police comes in. That's when security comes in, to, like it does with every public gathering. And then this other point of saying that, disruption of business. Just imagine all businesses around Parliamentary Avenue, all the way City Hall, Siadbari, they are affected now for almost a week. In fact, there's more disruption by security deployment than there would have been by a peaceful protest. People are stopped, cars are blocked. So this whole thing is politics. And I can't remember, Kenneth, you're a journalist of long standing. You can point me to any peaceful protest against government policies that police has given a go-ahead in the recent 10 or 15 years. So it's just politics. All this other thing of saying that, it's just politics. The fight against corruption is not a single person's.
Well, there is one that the President Yoweri Museveni refers to in his letter, and it occurred.
It was his own protest. That was his own protest when he was walking.
On Wednesday, 4th December 2019.
That was his own, protesting against the corruption in his government. And he says he's organizing another one. So that was his, and so I can't say that that was. In fact,
it was a walk.
Well,
you mean protest does not
a walk and be protest.
Fahimi said it's a
It was a walk against corruption, and I'm using my words to say he was protesting against
the
corruption.
definition, source.
So at the end of the day, this is politics. The issue of peaceful assembly. Just a few weeks ago, they arrested a solo protester, a lady called Fatuma Nansubuga. She was alone carrying a placard, and she was brutally arrested. You remember the women MPs who were working to the Ministry of Internal Affairs, 9 of them, brutally arrested. So what mode can people peacefully show their discontent? So it's politics. There is nothing legal about it. It's about maybe people feeding him with what he wants to hear, that this is, maybe we shall come back to that, this is foreign led. The Honorable Mulongo is saying we know their intentions. Well, if you read people by people's intentions, then you'd not do anything. Because if you look in the studios and you say who intends to do what tomorrow, even you may be put under preventive arrest.
That's not how intelligence works. Not
so,
just by looking
and in any case, this whole question of intelligence,
as you wind up,
when all these corruption scandals come up, the other question is, where is intelligence? When 10 trillion are lost to corruption where is intelligence? That intelligence you cite when people are going to protest. Where is it when 10 trillion every year is lost according to the government's own IGG?
The report.
They do postmortems.
No.
Well, Spectrum Xtra on Radio 1 FM 90 review of the major events of the week. Our focus is on the fight against corruption, looking at what has been happening in our country since Tuesday. Protests on the streets led by young people. And we know President Yoweri Museveni has insisted that these protests are not of people who are focusing on the fight against corruption. There's another motive funded by foreigners, and therefore they will not be allowed to go ahead. In fact, says the security agencies worked around the clock to stop those plans from happening. Share with us your views using the WhatsApp line 0703 090 090. Tell us what do you think about these activities, the protests, but also how the state has responded to them. We are going for a break. When we return, we'll hear the views of Mr. Nicholas Opio and Miss Charity Kalebo as we continue focusing on the fight against corruption and the developments that we are seeing. Stay tuned, Radio 1. We continue after this break. We're back on Spectrum Xtra live on Radio 1 FM 90, live on its website www.radio1fm90.com, live on the different radio listening apps which can be obtained from the Google store of your smartphone. We're also live on DSTV audio channel 897. Our focus is on the fight against corruption, specifically looking at the protests, but also the reaction of the state and the tough stance taken by President Yoweri Museveni. I'm speaking to the Honorable Simon Mulongo, Mr. Nicholas Opio, Mr. George Musisi, and Miss Charity Kalebo. Now, let me bring in Charity. You've been internalizing the statement of the president, but also followed closely what was happening. The reasons were given by the protesters were 7, pushing for a number of issues there, including the reduction of the size of parliament, among other issues. And you've also heard from your colleagues who have already spoken. What's your view?
So, I like the fact that the right to protest was being tried out. We have rights in the Bill of Rights from Article 20 through to 50. And some of those rights have just been taken for granted. Now, if you read one of the scholars in jurisprudence called Jean-Jacques Rousseau, in the time of the revolution, of the French Revolution and all those times, one of the things he encouraged people to do was don't just sit back when governance is going in the wrong direction. As a citizen, your voice should be heard, but if your voice is not being heard, protest. Simply protest, but protest peacefully. Now, the young people said, we are tribeless, we are borderless, we are leaderless, but we are coming. And the young people said they were tired of corruption, and they were tired that a lot of research has been done. I think the Afrobarometer just less than a month ago has released the research where they showed that the leaders in Uganda do not listen to the citizens. And the citizens have been online, the young people have been online, consistently telling public servants and telling the government that they are tired of corruption. And they gave the reasons. They said, we have a big parliament, each of these people is paid 50 million. If we calculate how much it is vis-a-vis the number of people in that house, then it's not effective for us. That was point 1. Point 2, they said, we want to see those who have been corrupt. And we have put out documents to show they have been involved in corruption, being tried in the courts of law and brought to book. Nothing to that effect is happening, and for that reason we must start somewhere. But we also saw members of parliament on the floor of parliament saying there is corruption in this house. Beyond the members of parliament, the president himself, when he was returning that bill, the appropriations bill, which he said members of parliament had appropriated wrongly. They moved off the script he had given them. He said that parliament is corrupt. So there should be no question about this thing called corruption, although yesterday we appeared with one MP from Simon Mulongo's party who said that corruption in Uganda is perceived. But I am happy that Simon Mulongo has clarified and said it is real. And so we should not bury our heads in the sand. Corruption in Uganda is real. The young people have thrown a stone in the bush. And the stone was, we want to be heard. You've kept us out for a long time. You've closed us out of the space for us to have conversation over issues that affect us directly. A young girl held a placard, and in the placard she said, I wouldn't have lost my mother if she could only access half of the money some members of parliament have bagged and taken on their own. That was a very emotional tweet. I don't know how many people have lost their moms, their dads, their relatives, their brothers, their sisters in hospitals simply because they could not access health services because somebody somewhere ate up money which was meant to buy drugs. Or I don't know how many people have been denied an opportunity to go to school because their schools just don't exist in the places where they're supposed to be, and it's because of corruption. That was money taken by someone somewhere and doesn't care whether that school is there or it's not there. So the young people are saying, we do not have public services that can serve us. And they are not lying. Even the old people know we do not have sufficient public services despite the taxes because of corruption. And the IGG has been clear. We lose about 81 trillion. I'm not talking about billion, trillion to corruption.
81?
Yeah.
The IGG says 10 trillion.
Go check her record, the last record that we have. We have gone to 81 trillion. How much money are we losing on a monthly basis? Check it out. But she said something like that. It's about 81 trillion is what we lose annually. Now, the money being as exponential as it is, I'll check back the figure, Kenneth, such that we are 100% sure. But the money is to those tunes, those crazy, crazy monies that we talk about. Now, if we are losing that kind of money, and the young people are saying, let's keep this money to be able to do what we call frugal spending, for us to have services, for us to have a good life where everybody is treated equally. Yesterday, one of them told us where there will not be Ebiana and Havana, that everybody will feel they are part of this country. Then we need to tackle this problem. But now, let's also look at what the president was telling us. He tells us that in 2019, he was part of the walk of Nakalema. The question there is, when he participated in this walk, what changed after 2019? It only got worse if we track the level of corruption. And he tells us that no, corruption is a very small war. I have fought bigger wars. I have fought bush wars. And I've always won these wars. But okay, if it is a small war, how come for 39 years the war only gets worse and worse? Okay, if it gets better, we don't seem to see that better. So the young people are saying, you're not giving them jobs. They are unemployed. They are 74% of your population. They want jobs. They want information. You're not giving them that information. You're not giving them jobs. They have no way of accessing you to understand what they are going through on a daily basis. What next option do they have to themselves than to protest?
All right, let's hear from Mr. Nicholas Opio. These protests, are they called for? What do you think about how they were conducted and the manner in which the state responded?
So this is how far the NRM has led us. By their own admission, the state itself is now under threat from corruption. Corruption is not just an existential issue for people whose parents are dead, whose kids have died in hospitals because of avoidable circumstances. It is also an issue of the survival of the state. We have gotten to a point where this is where Museveni has led us to. We are on the precipice of disaster. So much so that the corrupt are now more powerful than the president. Because by his own admission, he says, if you touch them, they might cause us problems. They might go and invest their money out.
And they do.
And they do. and you see that the issue of corruption has become a state issue as well. But the third point is that it is now a personal thing to Museveni. I don't think he sees the protest on the street as a protest about corruption, but rather about his leadership that has led us to this point of disaster. For him, it is personal. Hence, the response. I don't think he sees that the young people who have gotten out on the streets have something that he should listen to. You can tell by his speech, he doesn't acknowledge their grievances. He blames everybody else except himself about the problems that these young people are raising. He has no empathy for those whose kids are now spending the weekend in detention, many of whom have been tortured. There were attempts to break people's ankles. You can see them on camera. by security agencies. And so I think that for anybody interested in dissecting President Museveni's speech, go and look at the Twitter handle of a young feminist researcher, Jackie Kemigisa, who has done a paragraph by paragraph analysis. Let me highlight 4 points for you. President Museveni opens with thanking security agencies for foiling what he calls bad demonstrations. So in his mind, there are bad demonstrations, then there are good demonstrations. These ones were bad demonstrations. In other words, citizens exercising their rights to participate in their governance is a bad thing. Citizens exercising their agency to engage their government in what they declared peaceful is a bad demonstration. People complaining about the failings of his government is a bad demonstration. This is how a head of state opens up his missive to the public. The second thing that President Museveni does is quintessential President Museveni, seeking to patronize Ugandans by calling us his children, his grandchildren, the Bazukulu. That sort of reference reduces us to a family kind of arrangement, a grandfather, you must call him father, you must call his wife mama. We are not his children. We are citizens in a republic asking questions of our government, trying to alter our relationship with him to that of father and children is not only illegal, but has no basis in political science. It's a tactic to reduce us and our status.
Well, father of the nation.
As
Symbol.
citizens.
Symbolic. Father of the nation.
Again, you can use that term as you wish, but that's a very loaded term that you can refer to people who have delivered their countries from independence, not people who have shot their way to power, right? And appropriated themselves that title. And so I think that he begins there by patronizing me and you. And I think many Ugandans are saying, we are not your children, we are citizens of this country in equal measure. In fact, between me and him, we are equal citizens, equal rights. He's only exercising delegated power as elected president. But in fact, he's a citizen like me and you, equal rights. So nobody is his child. His children are known. It's not these young people on the streets. So this reference of Bazukulu is patronizing, is condescending, seeks to alter state relations with their citizens. I think we must begin to be treated as citizens. The third point is this overall questions of foreign funding, the quintessential excuse for many failing African leaders. And really, let me make 2 points in this regard. The first is that they don't have the balls, in other words, the courage, to speak in young people lingo, to name that foreign power. Because I don't want to be anybody's agent. If I am anybody's agent, tell me who that master is. Is it the government of Kenya? Is it the government of Rwanda? Is it the government of the US or the UK or Belgium or France? Name that foreign power that you harp about every time. Otherwise, this is a dog whistle. The second argument to make in that regard is he suggests that because people get funding from outside this country, they are therefore foreign agents of those who fund them. Okay? But two things to say in that regard. First is that the nature of global capital is that global capital and the money economy flows from the global north to the global south. The private sector in this country gets money from venture capital funds around the world. Our economy is run by foreign banks who get capital to run their business from all over the world. It doesn't make them foreign agents. Why would it then become foreign agents if it is civil society, if it is young people who are demonstrating? It is disingenuous. But let's assume that receiving money from a foreign source makes you a foreign agent, an agent of new colonialism. Then the biggest agent in that regard is President Museveni, is government, because this government relies on millions and billions of dollars from foreign countries and foreign entities. So the argument that because you receive money from foreign agents, therefore you are... The fourth point to make before I yield is this whole question that you will be overwhelmed with evidence when you come to court. Kenneth, there's a difference between intelligence and evidence. This operation to arrest and torture young people was being run by heads of security agencies. If you were at CPS, the people who were commanding that operation at CPS, that blocks lawyers, blocked people from seeing their loved ones, chased people away from CPS, was led by the commandant of the SFC and the commandant of military police. At Ginger Road Police Station, the operation was being commanded by, you know who? CMI boss, Afande Birunji. He was there physically commanding the operation. That is intelligence gathering. Intelligence is not evidence. Intelligence is perhaps useful for certain decisions, but I dare say is not what you take to court. What you take to court is evidence. And so far, he has presented none to back up the lofty claims he makes about these young people are foreign funding, the other people who are doing this. I think it is pure political baloney. And I think the president needs to step down from the high pedestal that he has placed himself and listen to the concerns of young people. He cannot say the fight against corruption is in his hand, he's the chief fighter, when in fact he has been the patron of this system. He's the president of the country. He's been superintending over it. And the last thing to say is that every time there are complaints about corruption, the certain actions are taken. We have reminded the president time and again that if you are sweeping stairs, you don't sweep it from down going up. You sweep from up coming down. The president is surrounded by individuals on whose heads allegations of corruption swirl like flies on feces or on carcasses. He has not done anything about them. You have your vice president. You have your. It's a metaphor. I'm painting a picture that allegations swirl over your head.
All right.
Okay. He has people around him, including his vice president, including his speaker of parliament, including his prime minister, including his minister for finance,
Nicholas,
caught with a hand in the till.
At the State of the Nation, he mentioned, he came close to saying the truth. He said, if you arrest everyone, who shall we work with? I thought he was being honest in that regard.
So for me, this whole response by President Museveni is escapist, avoids the issue. He should listen to citizens who are talking to him.
All right. One other thing, Honorable Mlongo, that President Yoweri Museveni did mention, not in this particular writing, but in the televised address, he talked about how there's enough food in Uganda where young people can eat and enjoy themselves. He also talked about people who are busy creating wealth, and then there's a certain group of people who actually want to disturb them. Is this about politics, or is it about the fight against corruption? Well, what in your view?
Yeah, thank you. But I think, first of all, I just want to put a record straight.
All right.
Right on some things, allegations made by some colleagues. One is that the Intel community, the methods being questioned as to how they handled Pastor Kanja's church incident and other incidents. Now, the intel collected includes the nature of the threat, the form of the threat, and therefore it demands the approach and the actions to be taken. So they can never be the same. The way even incidents have been handled of intelligence-led operations, it depends on the nature of the threat. So it cannot be said to be uniform, because they're never uniform anyway, just like your fingers are never uniform. It demands different actions and approaches. The other one is the language of use of grandchildren by the president. Presumably, first of all, it's illegal and also patronizing, condescending, and all those kind of adjectives. The fact is that there's nothing illegal about it. I want to challenge anybody, any lawyer in this country, tell me that's illegal. It's not illegal.
I'm not his child.
And as such,
never met my mother.
The president is just being an African cultured gentleman who refers to anybody of a certain age of his grandchildren as grandchildren. In my village, anybody who is at the age of my dad is father. And that's what we are. And because we have had this Western education where they have all this kind of descriptions we give to relationships, and they are so limited that anybody beyond that, they don't know how to
All
call
right.
it.
You seem
So,
to be,
I-
seem to be focusing on that issue alone and not looking at the substance.
Yes, yes, I
like
am.
Nicholas Opio was
Because
putting across.
he
Nicholas Opio's concern is that by using those words, he then weakens the resolve of the citizens, the young people, to actually demand for accountability from him. How dare you start asking your grandfather to account?
To the contrary, if we belong to the same family, have better rights to make certain demands where a foreigner, as somebody who is not part of the family, would have done.
Mm.
So that actually empowers the likes of Council Nicholas Opio to even make better rights, because the levels of legit of this person asking for things of their father is much even superior. So in that case, really, you have been more empowered, and you should be proud that you have a relationship by blood, so to say, to even put your demands.
Well,
Well, somebody who is from outside.
The Bible somewhere says that if a child asks for a bread, you cannot give them a serpent.
Exactly.
Now let's compare what is
exactly,
going on.
and that means that the president, first of all, Jesus used the word. The Bible is using the word a child. A child means a letter to a parent, and if a child asks from a parent something, should be given. So actually, if the president referred to you as a grandchild, you have better rights of being given what you're supposed to deserve, as the Bible says. So I think
the children
to
are-
me, it's not
the-
just patronize.
The children are asking for action against corruption.
Yes, but
and
the
instead,
action, we see the Constitution gives powers to the people, Article 1. But that power must be exercised in accordance with the Constitution, the provisions, the institutions, the frameworks. So it's not just because you have power, therefore you like like the Kenyan
Have you read Article
so-called
17 of the
formulas
Constitution?
and formulas and
No, have you read Article
faceless
17
and
of the
leaderless, and they
Senior.
want to dictate
Let me
in a
give you
manner that is
information.
against the constitutional and other secondary law legal provisions. So in this case, yes, you have a very good point, Council Opio. But the issue is that what methods are we using? By running on the road is good enough to pass a message. But that's not how we effect.
What
So
was
what-
the president
so
going
what's
to
the
achieve by
alternative?
his
What's
work
the
in
alternative?
The
2019?
alternative is that people should, first of all, protests
Go to Betty
are
Kamea,
allowed.
go to Nakalema and talk about
Protests are
corruption.
allowed. By the way, as long as the persons are in good faith, they are peaceful, and we have conditions
No,
and regulations
Simon,
that
Honorable
go to
Simon,
this.
Honorable
Yes.
Simon.
would you like to take
Let
information
me
from Nicholas?
correct you. Let me correct
Is he
you.
providing information?
Information,
If
information.
he's
Two,
correct,
two.
he's not. I cannot give him
Information.
somebody to correct. I'm a lawmaker.
Okay,
I'm not just a practitioner.
okay, information.
I'm a lawmaker,
Information.
a constitutional maker, and a lawmaker.
Well,
so I'm talking things confidently.
When,
of what-
when you're
what
making
we
when
make
you're
is-
making
yes,
the-
yes.
when you're
Give
making
information.
when you're
He's
He's
making
trying
the
to correct a
constitution,
lawmaker when he's just
No,
a
no.
practitioner.
when you're making
But with the due respect, he's a very good lawyer.
when you're making the law or making the constitution, you do so consulting the citizens. So let's hear from the citizens.
Hear from the citizens. You listen.
Well,
You
much
listen.
obliged.
All right.
The young people wrote to the police in conformity with the Public Order Management Act. There's a form provided for in the annexure of the Public Order Management Act. And the law says notify the police of your protest. They notified the police 2 weeks in advance. The letter was received. The duty of the police, as the law provides, is to provide for them security. The police could not even have a discussion about safe roads for your demonstration. Instead, they say we can't allow demonstration in the city. So if you are saying they must do so in accordance with the law, they have fulfilled all the requirements of the law. What do? Instead of protecting them,
All right.
you deploy even more force to prevent them.
Was that supposed to be information or a question?
Information. That
Information, the letter
the
they wrote
issue
from the
is-
IGP.
Yes, people can write,
Mm.
and they could write correctly. But if the circumstances discovered behind
It's
the
not in the
activity
what you're saying
is
is not in the law.
questionable,
It's not in the law.
then the police have the right
It's not
under
in
the law
Which law?
to really
Which law? Okay, Simon.
stop it.
Which law?
Of course,
Tell
the
me which
public
law.
order management.
Come on, no. We have
The
have
lawmaker
litigated.
needs
We have
guidance.
The issue
litigated.
is-
Oh, no. It's
Am I
important for the
just,
viewers. Listen,
You're
Can I
protected.
be protected?
You're protected.
And
You
particularly
need the
from-
protection.
I
Who's
can't
not
allow
making
this
a
to
point, but he's
happen.
just making
You're
arguments.
protected.
If you
The-
listen,
The
you
issue
listen to the
is
point.
the same police
Mm.
has the responsibility to ensure order,
Law and
order
Mm.
in the community.
Mm.
If they have reasons, even to suspect justifiably to suspect that this is leading to something bad, they have a reason to stop it. So, yes, the law provides for the same, but at the same time, the very law gives authority to the police to even stop it should they have reasons to ensure
All right.
suspect
Let's hear
that
from
it
George
is
here.
not
Let's hear from
it's not
George.
the other motives.
You're also a lawyer, George.
Other
You
motives.
share with
Clearly,
us.
clearly.
I
But,
disagree.
but can we have a lawyer who interprets the law objectively,
All
but
right.
not because of political party
Be
affiliation?
as objective.
Especially when it's dressed in
So which one do you want?
And then he wants a general
neither yellow nor red, but objection.
Let me
No, he
advise.
wants
Let
a
me advise Honorable Bulongo, who is a senior lawmaker, that he clearly needs some bit of help in understanding the
No,
law
the
he made.
constitution he made in
Yeah.
95 is now different from what we have. So he
Changed
doesn't know. He's still talking about the past.
Honorable
As
Simon.
amended, yes, go ahead.
Honorable Simon clearly needs help in understanding the law he made.
Surely.
You said to talk about an objective lawyer. Actually, the public order management and everything pertaining to it, it has been settled by courts. It's no longer contentious. That's what I said, that when a law is made and anyone challenges it or needs interpretation, we go to the Constitutional Court.
But it's still the police
The
act.
Constitutional
The police
Act.
act.
No, listen. You know,
Let's listen
Kenneth.
because he has a better, he has
Yes,
objective.
the
yes,
police
Kenneth,
act
Kenneth,
does
and
give
now
the
I'm seeing
police-
the lawmaker confusing
No,
you,
actually,
but let me help
the
the
police
listeners.
act does.
The police act,
Order,
Which
Mr.
section?
Moderator.
Which section?
Am I confusing
I'm not in
anyone?
court.
yeah, the Police Act does not supersede the Constitution.
The Police Act was nullified. Section 32 was nullified.
So pass the
Mwana
Constitution.
Chivumbia
And like I told
another-
the Constitutional Court has spoken very loudly on this, that there's even no gray area, no matter our political affiliation. There's no gray area, even police. So it's a matter of enforcement. And the moment you move away from what the law says to sentiments, to say that this is not in good faith, that's draconian. That's where the decrees come from, because decrees means that there's no standard. It's about who is looking at what. Honorable Mulongo, I'm sure, was here in the country about 10 days ago when people were protesting to Parliament against their MP, our friend Honorable Sechiko. They walked and were escorted by police. You said, Honorable Simon, that what does a walk do against corruption? Is it the most effective way? What was President Museveni doing in 2019, that walk he fronts? Was it the most effective of fighting corruption? So the reason why this condescending attitude that Nick is talking about from the president is that because he doesn't see corruption as the biggest problem. He's one of the beneficiaries of corruption. We were all here in the 7th Parliament when they were getting 5 million to change a constitution in his favor. He was the only Ugandan who benefited from that
So
provision.
was that information or?
No, I'm not giving you information. You're off the
Alright.
floor.
Spectrum
Yeah.
Xtra on Radio 1 FM 19. Let's go for a break.
The legal counsel
When we return,
all my time.
when we return, we'll hear from Charity, but also there's that very important issue of foreign interests. Foreign interests. What are these foreigners? What are these foreigners who are trying to mislead our young people by providing them those colossal sums of money that have been quoted on social media and other places? And ironically, I also saw Nicholas Opio has a mansion, a very beautiful mansion, and he will also be explained to us when we will be going for housewarming. Stay tuned. Radio 1 FM 90 Spectrum Extra continues after this break. Thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra, live on Radio 1 FM 90, reviewing the major events of the week. We are looking at the fight against corruption, the protests carried out by young people, and how President Yoweri Museveni responded. We have comments coming in from the WhatsApp number 0703 090. I'm going to sample some of those comments and then bring in the views of Charity Kalebo and then the Honorable Simon Mulongo, who was itching to conclude his point there. We have a comment. Can Honorable Mulongo tell us why he was sent away? I think this is another issue altogether. And then he says, when the so-called foreigners give them aid, grants and donations, why are they called development partners? All government media cameras and then hyping and singing chorus songs in support of development partners. When the same foreigners talk about corruption, we call them imperialists, colonizers, and we vow to crush them. That's a comment coming in from Pasi Mulamba. We have another comment. It's obvious that the regime will fight whoever tries to stop corruption in their tenure. That's a comment from Nicholas in Mutundwe. If we avoid politicizing the fight against corruption, that will be the beginning of realizing success in the fight. The government is always threatened by any slight thought of being overthrown. The effort and the attention put in fighting young people protesting against corruption was next to the effort of fighting a guerrilla war with the attackers having ammunition. How I wish that is the effort applied to prevent trillions lost annually in our country? That's a comment from David. We have another comment from Paul, from this listener who says, this week, President Paul Kagame sacked his minister because of corruption allegations. In Uganda, we have a minister still in cabinet after having caught him red-handed when he roofed his farm with iron sheets that he had stolen. What kind of evidence does the president need to take action? That is Moses listening in from here in Kampala. Wilson Bikakanga Muyenga says, I don't buy the idea of foreign-funded demonstration. Unfortunately, Mr. Museveni remembers how he was foreign-funded in the 30s to fight bad governments, in the 80s to fight bad governments, but it was his unquestionable right as a youth to voice his rights then. Then he says, today he's even lucky to have young people waking up to fight graft alongside his efforts, which our MPs have instead escalated. What do you expect of these jobless young people as the voice of corruption grows wings beyond his span? Then we have another comment. Good evening, Kenneth. My name is Luis, and he says, during budget reading, the minister read it clearly that from the rank of captain to private, they will get a 25% salary increment. But I was surprised to see public service giving police only 9% when they released the circular of 2024-2025. Is that not corruption? And then he say thanks. Then we have a comment. Good evening, George from Bunga. Mr. Mlongo reminds me about my former head teacher in O-level, cautioning students over stealing habits. He used to tell us that a thief can steal and steal. Once he looks around, there is nothing to steal, he steals himself. Now students could wonder, how can someone steal himself? Basically, what I'm trying to bring out is that the groups of Mr. Mlongo defend even where a toddler can see. Well, those are some of the comments coming in. Let's bring in Charity.
But
And
the purpose that you bring me in.
I'm bringing in Charity, and then you continue with the discussion.
We have
Charity,
the last word.
let's hear from you,
As an
especially
elder,
on
your
this issue of
grandfather.
foreign funders. People are actually trying to mislead our young people who have adequate food, who have relatives, friends, and families who are busy creating wealth, and then some people actually want to derail these efforts. And actually, President Yoweri Museveni says that these schemes began so long ago on the African continent, about 600 years ago.
Okay, so the young people do not have adequate food. The food is there. Uganda is a rich country with a lot of food, but the young people do not have adequate food. I can say that with confidence because I've managed to talk to young people in difficult circumstances. Recently, I met young people from the slums, and they assured me they eat food from the gutters. They assured me that they have to sell marijuana, mira, and all these things, drugs, plus small packets of waraji to get 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 to survive in a day. Why? Because they found themselves born in a slum without a father, without a mother. Their mothers conceived them in bars, restaurants, or wherever it is they conceived them from, and dumped them in slums. So it's not true that every young person has food or access to food. That I wanted to be very clear about. Secondly, if it was also true that they had jobs, then we would not see an influx of young people in all these export companies, recruitment companies, daily begging for jobs to be taken to the Middle East. People qualify from university and they have their degrees. They look around for jobs. They even go to shops and say, I'm willing to sell, I'm willing to do anything. And there is nothing for them. There is no chain of creating jobs. The innovation is there, the will is there, but the information that they require to be able to create these jobs, or to be able to access the markets, or to be able to access the production chains is not there. And that is where the missing link is. The young people need information that will take them to places where they can get jobs, that will lead them to places where they can be useful to themselves and to the people around them. But as it is right now, they are busybodies They don't have information. They're looking for jobs. They can't find the jobs. They are going abroad, some of them losing kidneys. You've had them stranded abroad, nobody caring about how they get money, and yet they still repatriate that money back here, and government benefits from the money that they manage to repatriate. But on the other side, of course, of the foreign interests that you talk about, the president says he has evidence. And for me, I am waiting for the next speech that he's going to give to us, because he says in the next speech he'll be able to prove to Ugandans that there were colonial forces and there were foreign interests in that protest. And he said his interest as the head of state was to immunize Uganda against the schemes of imperialists and their agents. And of course, I also know that for a long time, civil society has been branded as agents of imperialists, except when government works with a civil society closely and realizes that no, this civil society actually has no imperialist or foreign agent connection. There are some NGOs that government has worked with and realized that no, this one is innocent. It actually has no foreign backing. But they also have others that they continually say have foreign backing. And they keep saying these ones are funded by foreigners, but the government is also funded by foreigners. So for me, what I want the president to clarify for us when he comes finally is to tell us, so this is how the money came, and this is so and so who received the money. Here is the evidence. Because for him, he has a security operative. For us, we do not have a security infrastructure like Simon Mulongo was saying, where we can get physical printouts from MTN, from Airtel, because you need legal document to be able to access somebody's information, the right to privacy. You cannot just wake up and interfere with somebody's information. But for him, he has access as head of state. So I hope he'll be able to tell us how these foreigners here finally pulled it off in his country. Because I also saw Kenya talking about foreigners, Ford Foundation, and Ford came out with a powerful statement, and they said, we did not give anyone any money. And later, Kenya itself realized that actually there were allegations that were being made. So I hope that when the president next comes, we'll be able to clearly see whether these young people who went on the street were funded by foreigners, or actually they are ordinary citizens who were feeling oppressed and they just want government to listen to them.
All right, very quickly on the issue of the foreign
funding. Of course,
funding before we go to
I envy Charity's optimism, whether that evidence will come. But just a quick one on foreign funding. I think Nick hinted at it that has been a rule, the first role in every African leader's book.
That reminds me, the president said that some of these foreign imperialists are actually working with some opposition political groups.
Was that information or question?
That was information.
Okay.
Just
Like
giving
which
information.
political group?
Yeah, but I'll come to that as well. But I'm saying that every African leader who has been questioned, so President Museveni is not the first to play. Everyone, all the way from Mugabe to Moi, to Mobutu. Mandela has never complained about foreign negative
You said
forces.
every leader.
I said every African leader has been questioned. I qualified it. So this is
He has what he wants to.
so it's playing. But then again, to Anderson's question or comment that political groups, yes, they are finding political groups, including government, don't they? Even the UPDF, which he cherishes, receives foreign funding. So foreign funding necessarily is not evil, because this government, for so many years of his leadership, has survived largely on foreign funding than local funding. Is that it's straight. Secondly, with the levels of poverty in Uganda and urban unemployment, if there was a group giving people 10,000 to go on the streets, we would have 100 people or more than every day willing to do that. If there was a group giving people 5,000 to go on the streets, and there would be many more. You see the stories of people going into slavery in the Middle East every day. With every gory stories, you find much more going. Not because they want to be tortured, but because they want to survive. So it's a fallacy. It's something. But then again, Why don't you address the point? Why don't you address the point that these people are saying, such that even those who are funding the foreigners don't have an issue to talk of? Because it's diversionary, and it's meant to create seeds of discord amongst even if you see the president's statement, he said some of them are misled, they don't know that they're leaders, such that when I march, I don't know whether Nicholas whom I'm marching with is earning or not. So it's intended to do exactly that. But if there was no cause, for me, I would rather we address the cause. Do these people, what they're addressing, is it a fallacy or not? Who is not affected by corruption? Even Mr. Museveni himself says that the fight, although now he wants to personalize it, but who has been in charge of it for all the other years?
All right, very quickly. Honorable Simon Mlogo, questions being pointed on this issue.
Simon can now give his
foreign
someone.
funders. Could you be having any idea who these foreign funders are and how we can deal with them?
Well, first of all, nobody's giving summons here. We're contributing at a talk show.
Yes, we are.
And the
said
president
in
did
jest.
state categorically that he was going to address the nation over this matter of funding. If it was in court, we would be talking about sub judice. Why don't we give the president the benefit of doubt? Because he's going to explain the things. Because foreign funding that is intended for subversive actions is real. It's not just hearsay.
Is the fight against corruption subversive?
The government gets money from foreign agencies based on the national interests of a given country, based on the agenda that has been set and approved by the population through elections. So we're talking about these monies that come for other purposes other than the common good that the government is supposed to provide to the people of the country. So if it is subversive, it is intended to disrupt law and order. If it is intended to be to cause chaos, definitely we must deal with it. Yes, there are CSOs that the government has dealt with, and those they have not dealt with that are well intended, even if they get money from outside. There's no problem with getting money from outside, but the purpose for which such money comes and intended to do, that is disruptive, that is irregular, that is illegal, that has to be checked. And these are two different things. So the government cannot be equated or related to illegal activities and ideas, but for the common good and for the legal activities in the country. Now, the issue of, somebody raised some questions about Somalia. I should answer this. I left Somalia because there was disagreement between the African Union Commission and the Somali government on the transition plan. And there were very clear issues we wanted Somali government to do as a precondition. And that's how the transition even collapsed, because the Somali government did not want to do certain things as a precondition for the AU to continue supporting the transition. And because of that, there was a displeasure on their part, no problem. But I continued serving, and I have a letter of commendation after I finished my tour of duty 2.5 years after Somalia with African Union at the headquarters as a special envoy. So really, I'm a proud person, and the AU is very proud of me, and I have nothing like any issues if somebody had some ill-conceived ideas. Now, the issue of keeping the minister who's been charged in the court, yes, it is true. If somebody is charged in court, there are circumstances where such a person can be said to step aside, just in case he may interfere or he or she may interfere with investigations. But these are the circumstances that are based on the discretion of the appointing authority. If the government believes that given the circumstances of the case, the person will not interfere with the investigations, then there's no problem with it. So it is not that everybody who has been arrested or charged and so on must therefore leave office. Which rule are we trying to quote here? So in this case, I do not accept that. Then the other one is unemployment. Yes, actually we have very serious unemployment case in Uganda. The rate of job creation is not matching the rate of the generation of people who are coming out of tertiary institutions, for example, and so on and so forth. And this is something that we have to handle all together. Yes, it's not just in Uganda alone. Even in America, even in UK, even in Kenya, even in Rwanda, even in Congo, we have all this unemployment. So it is a problem we must continuously fight to see that we have employment opportunities that open up for the sake of these many young people who are being churned out. And the youth badge, by the way, is a serious issue. And I know as a person in political circles, that is worrisome, because the number of kids who are coming out, and we see, as my sister put it, who go to, now that I'm not patronizing you, but my sister who was putting it, that yes, kids going to Middle East is a serious matter. It's not just here alone. If you go to Middle East, even from West Africa, North Africa, Southern Africa, Southeast Asia, it's pathetic. So let's have an atmosphere where the investment climate is good for us to enhance our investment portfolio, to enhance opportunities for employment. And that's why the protests that are meant to disrupt and cause an atmosphere that is dissuasive of investors to come in the country, it should be guided, not to be done. Because people can even make their points, like we're here. We're making points very strong to those who must understand and receive this information, that these are suggestions, proposals, even if some colleagues are just only criticizing but not making proposals. But we should make proposals that are practical, they are feasible, so that government can enhance its act.
You seem to suggest that the reasons the youth are on the street is basically because of unemployment. Some of those youth I saw actually demonstrating are even working in NGOs. They have jobs. Some are lawyers. They are in law firms.
Well, I was just answering.
It must be something beyond what is on your table.
Referring to about the unemployment. And but for the protests, many people were there. I don't know their faces, I know their status, but I know some of them could be employed, but they're angry. Some of them could be unemployed, but they're angry. The issue, as somebody said, is about anger. But the issue is, how do we demonstrate that anger? Even now, we're demonstrating our anger. But you don't have to carry leaves and placards and begin roughing people up. We don't have to do that. But you can pass the same message differently.
All right. At the heart of all these protests and so forth, the bigger talking points are actually about governance, but even service delivery. I'm coming to Nicholas Opio.
And for me, who is
I'm coming to Nicholas Opio.
Human rights,
and you can see that's where my attention is.
Human rights defender.
Nicholas Opio. So some people say this issue is about governance, but it's also about service delivery. How can we connect those two to these protests?
No, those two things are not different. Those two things are the same. The truth of the matter is that there are those actively seeking to bastardize the protests by the Ugandan young people by naming it something other than what the youth are saying that they're doing. I have taken the chance to read the placards that people were holding when they were demonstrating, thanks to the great work of the media, that you could read. The messages are very clear. They're asking you that the Speaker of Parliament must go.
There are 7 reasons they put forward.
It's all clear.
The size of Parliament should be reduced.
This conjecture, this creative reference to intelligence, really is a refrain we've had far too often.
The placard anyway, yes.
It's a refrain we've had far too long, and I think that the invitation to people like Honorable Simon, who are at least viewed rather more sophisticated than many people in government, is that you convince your colleague or your colleagues in government that not every demonstration is intended to remove President Museveni from power.
That's why the protest the president is quoting.
Sorry?
Even the government knows that protests which are peaceful are good, and the president quotes some of them.
Yeah, but the president is not my authority on peacefulness, because I don't think it's a peaceful. Inherently, his
fought for peace.
His orientation, his mental orientation.
He's a
from
pacifier.
His university thesis, from his conduct.
Created the peaceful environment for us to even criticize him.
It's a matter of opinion.
It's not better.
It's a matter of opinion. That's mine. Opinions are like battles. We all have one, right? Let me have mine. This is mine.
Birthmarks.
So I think that you have to get to a point in which you accept that people have a right to demonstrate. Allow them to demonstrate. Hear them. I was asking the Honorable San Mulondo, who made the constitution. Mulongo, sorry, my sincere apologies for my low mix-up of these terms. Is that, has he read Article 17 of the Constitution on the duties of citizens to combat corruption and wastage of public resources? The young people are simply fulfilling a constitutional command, a command of the Constitution. Citizens are saying this is our duty to exercise this power. But everywhere you want to do this, even on the floor of Parliament, you can't. They are gagging you. MPs are complaining, we can't speak about corruption here. You come on the streets, nobody wants you to go and they want you to go and march with Nakalema to Kololo with President Museveni. These performative marches to show that you're fighting corruption will not help. So I think that we've got to get to a point where you listen to people. We are citizens. You have to deal with us. We are here. We're not going anywhere.
All right.
And we are saying something is wrong. Rather than blaming everything on everybody else, take a good look in the mirror and say, maybe they have a point. These young people have gone to the extreme ends of the world to stress that they want to be peaceful. They have complied with the law, written to the police, met with the police and say, this is what we want to do. Other than telling them to choose their means of performing a constitutional duty, which is it's not in their place. You cannot control the content of a protest or the manner in which somebody wants to protest. Their role is to provide for that space. And we must debunk once and for all the sense that every demonstration is a riot. Absolutely not. More often than not, actually, things go haywire because of the reaction and conduct of security forces who show up as though they're going to fight Al-Shabaab, battle ready with their military equipment against kids holding placards. Those kind of things tend to flame tension, and the role of the state is, if there are anybody committing a crime, breaking windows, stealing from shops, is to arrest that person and isolate them and allow those who are committed to a peaceful protest make their protest and let them take that protest to where they think it has impact. That's the role of the state. But we have a perverted mindset here where we think every protest is a riot. Protests are not synonymous to riots.
All right.
The role of the state is to allow me, even in the conduct, every single right to exercise, you're going to inconvenience somebody. Even just driving on the road, somebody must give way. But we allow that to happen so that, suffer this small inconvenience for the greater good of society, so we can all exercise our rights. It shouldn't mean that somebody who will not be able to go to his shop on Kampala Road for 1 hour must have his right more than the rights of somebody who wants to come and protest on Kampala Road. A functioning state creates an atmosphere in which there's minimal inconvenience, accepts that there will be inconvenience. We are inconvenienced every day when President Museveni is moving in town. They block the roads. The other day for over 4 hours, we couldn't use the express highway to go to Entebbe. When you have paid, you are being told to step aside, and we're waiting for one person to pass.
That's
Exercise of a right by necessity causes some minimal inconvenience to other people. The state must allow that inconvenience to be as minimal, allowing everybody to exercise that right simultaneously.
All right, the fight against corruption, let's shift a little bit to Parliament, Mr. George Masisi. This week, we learned that Honorable Theodore Sechikubu and his group have finally managed to gather the signatures required to move the House into action. We saw that hot debate as MPs were insisting there's need to have a debate about corruption in Parliament. Actually, one MP telling the Right Honorable Anita Mong and the Right Honorable Thomas Tayewa that
Why
they need
running?
to clean their names.
Why are you running?
And we saw some developments there where the House was actually, the sittings were actually being suspended, then they were called back for the special sitting for the late Honorable MP. Are we likely to see a hot debate? Are we likely to see action in Parliament when it comes to issues of fighting against corruption in that particular house?
No, we're not likely to see that because of the style of leadership of the current speaker. You may remember that when there was an online exhibition about Parliament earlier in the year, the Honorable Leader of Opposition and the Honorable from Remiaga, Honorable Sechikubo, trying to bring it to the floor of Parliament. And I've always argued that Parliament missed a chance by clearing their names when these, I don't want to use the words of Nick, but the swirling flies were over them, hovering over them. I don't want to repeat what the words Nick said.
Please don't.
You know, Nick has the advantage of not translating some of these words locally. But when
It sounds better in Uganda, does it?
when the two members try to say that, Honorable Speaker, we need to debate this. Online, there are lots of things. The Honorable Speaker, actually, on top of referring to...
It's called the Right Honorable Speaker.
Well, the Right Honorable
Yes.
Speaker, all pun intended, tried to... you remember the words she referred to Honorable Sechikubo said, you take away your nonsense. And in her comment, she said, I will not comment about online rumors. How quickly she had forgotten that a commission of Parliament had been suspended, actually vacated from the commission because of what he posted online. So when she's a beneficiary, online rumors have been used. Online rumors. So I thought that Parliament missed a chance to exhaustively handle that debate and have either their name cleared by resolution of Parliament to say that no, there's nothing wrong here, or the flies continue swirling around them. And of course, even they are swirling so much that even the self-appointed German shepherd of the speaker cannot explain some of the happenings. So the window that was given, that we saw in the week when the deputy was chairing.
Self-appointed German shepherd.
There's someone who described himself as the speaker's German shepherd. When MPs try to
That's
get
a backing dog.
and I can tell you that
You're protected, you can say the names.
the debate we saw this week and the latitude with which the MPs spoke about corruption openly this week under the chair of the deputy speaker wouldn't have happened if the speaker was presiding. And I may be speculative, but I have reasons to say that possibly the abrupt suspension of the House, 5 minutes to plenary, was possibly to curtail any further debate, because it was suspended at 1:45, then 1 hour later another notice comes to call. So we are not likely to see the motion of Mr. Sechikubo and all his colleagues is likely to be caught up in the politics, the same politics that has seen him struggle to raise those numbers. You know that the sentiment of, you know that there's always been politics when it comes to collecting of signatures. At one point, I think it was the 6th Parliament of Honorable, over the death of Honorable Nebanja, 2012, Nebanda, Celia. And at one point, we had to see the signature, then someone withdrawing, then a speaker's ruling on whether withdrawn. And we've seen it now. Even if that debate is to get on the floor, if at all it does, it will be caught up in the politics, like we saw every debate in this House where the speakers had an interest. It has been caught up in the politics. All
right, Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. Let's go for a break. When we return, Charity, Honorable Mlongo, and Mr. Nicholas Opio will weigh in on this issue of Parliament and the fight against corruption. Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90 will continue after this break. Thank you very much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra live on Radio 1 FM 90. Our topic of discussion, the fight against corruption in Uganda. We've been looking at the protests, and they were targeting Parliament, and that's where we are at the moment. That house has been accused of being corrupt, not only by the citizens but also by President Yoweri Museveni himself. The speaker has insisted that she's just being targeted because of her tough stance on homosexuality in this country. But MPs are now focusing on removing from office 4 commissioners, but some people actually fear that this debate will actually roll over and possibly affect the speaker. Some people have even hinted that that's one of the reasons why the collection of the signatures has been a little bit hard for the Honorable Sechikubo and the team. My guests this evening, Mr. George Musisi, Mr. Nicholas Opio, the Honorable Simon Mulongo, and Charity Ayimbisiwe. Miss Charity Ayimbisiwe Kalebo, please, you on the microphone on this issue of Parliament.
So, Kenneth, sometimes it is interesting. If you listened to the musical that was made about the Speaker of Parliament, Anita, you stole the money. The voice that is in that music piece, if my phone was working, I should play it for you, is an English voice or a Western voice. It's not a Ugandan who sang this song. The lyrics are exactly from the West.
Maybe
and
artificial intelligence?
And then the president tells us about the forces of colonialism and slave trade and neo-colonialism. So these songs here sometimes can become neo-colonialist, or, my head started playing around with this song. But anyway, we'll leave the song and go back to Parliament. Dr. Florence Akiki from Masindi said her constituency had forced her to sign off.
Forced her?
Yes,
Against
to
the
sign off the censure motion. She comes from NRM, and she said she waited for guidance from her political party. That guidance did not come. And the head of the NRM in Parliament, the Honorable...
The government chief whip.
Obua, had said no member of the NRM should go and sign that censure motion. Remember, for me from the start, I have been in support. Yeah, it was guidance, but she kept hoping beyond hope.
Do not allow Honorable Molongo to derail.
But he is, so let me respond to him because he's NRM. And so the NRM had said, do not sign the censure motion. I had been in support of this motion from the time Sechkubo said, I have a motion against the members of Parliament who awarded themselves a service award. Why? Because it was not anywhere in the rules of procedure. It's not anywhere in their Emoluments Act. It's not anywhere that commissioners can award themselves these service grant awards. So, for me, I wanted them to debate it on the floor of Parliament and bring these commissioners to book. When politics set in, and now NRM came with a position saying, do not sign, I started to wonder, are they on the people's side or are they against the people? And so when the MP came, she said, my people told me they are going to destroy my property. If they don't destroy it, I will never see Parliament again. They've put me under immense pressure, and because they are my people, they're the ones who vote me, I will sign the motion. Shortly after she had signed, we had enough signatures to the motion of Honorable Sechkubo. That is a win for the people, and I congratulate the people of Masindi. The rest of the people in the rest of Uganda, you need to put the same pressure on all your MPs, whether they are NRM where they have told them do not sign. Please, the buck stops with you. You can determine who will be your MP, whether they represent your views or they do not represent your views. Of course, the punishment of those who gave themselves a service award will not stop corruption, but we must start somewhere. I believe that if the whip is cracked on this set, nobody who will be a commissioner, and I was talking to Proscovia Salam Musumba. She was a commissioner in the 6th Parliament. She told me you could not even steal a phone in 6th Parliament. You could not even steal a pen. If you did, the electorate was so alert. Even Parliament itself would put you to the side for corruption. They followed the rules to the letter. Now, if the commissioners in the 6th Parliament were as serious as that, what happened when it came to the 11th Parliament that people can even award themselves? I'm happy about the MPs that stood on the floor of Parliament and said, look, we must debate the question of corruption. One of them, of course, saying that they have said that people who wear suits are thieves. and
Owechitiibwa.
That Owechitiibwa in Luganda.
Jonathan Odur, the Honorable Jonathan Odur.
Yes.
No, but that's actually the true thing on the
He
streets.
said Owechitiibwa means you are a thief. And we saw a song by a young girl who actually said people who wear suits these days, we fear them, because those that wear suits are the thieves. They take from us. We can't attend school. We don't have good roads. We don't. And the expression coming from the young citizens said, maybe for us, the young ones, when we talk, the older ones will begin to hear us. I like this new activism that is coming out of the population, and I hope it keeps growing, because when it grows, what it does, it makes every leader accountable. It means that you just do not wake up and do what you want, and then it looks like impunity everywhere. You can get away with anything you want. Good governance promotes accountability.
All right. We have comments coming in. Kamoko Fred Keta, listening in from Kira Municipality. Good evening, Spectrum Extra. There are two reasons perhaps why President was wary of the youth demonstrating against corruption. It's common knowledge that corruption is intertwined with most government institutions, the very reason why they are rendered non-functional by way of duplication of their services. So fighting the vice will be risky as cutting a tree branch you are seated on. Secondly, Sabarwan could not allow the Baskul to steal the show from him for fighting corruption, otherwise to tantamount to a vote of no confidence to his governance, which has been in power closely to 40 years. He sees himself as the only one who can do it, no one else. In fact, if you read between the lines, why the issue of fighting corruption at this point of time when the elections are peeping at the corner? He has the reason now to deliver to the electorates come 2026. Let's hear from you, Honorable Mulongo. Corruption in Parliament.
Yes, thank you very much. As I said, first of all, I want to correct the impression that the NRM government has a position of MPs, NRM MPs not signing.
Obua said it on the floor of Parliament. Honorable
I'm the one
Mulongo,
on the floor. I'm on the floor.
let me give you one piece of it.
Can I just make
Yeah,
my
you're
point?
going to make a point.
Yes, no, but I've not
Parliament.
allowed you to interfere with
please
my
allow
thought.
1
Yeah,
second.
because you made your statement. I'm just quoting what you said.
Yes.
You said that the honourable government chief whip,
Yes. Obua.
they told the
NRM MPs
not to sign.
Yes.
I'm saying,
the censure motion.
I'm telling you now and here that there has never been an official NRM position
So
which must come from a decision of SEC. SEC has said like twice.
So he gave his own
Please,
position.
please don't interfere. Okay, you speak for me then.
Honorable
I'm saying there
Mulongo,
is
Parliament
no-
loses
Okay,
2.6
can you
billion daily.
Can you give me any
That-
written?
that
Please
is the
proceed,
last
Honorable
position.
Mulongo.
I'm saying there is no official position by NRM leadership, including SEC, which makes such decisions to that effect. I'm not saying that perhaps the Honorable Board did not say that. It's possible he said it, but I'm saying there is no official position. I know that some people can make decisions and provide guidance at various levels, but you cannot take this to be the official position. This is simply because even the Honorable Theodore is an NRM person.
Well, Honorable Bua is quoted saying that Honorable Theodore and his team violated the party constitution and rules of procedure of the NRM caucus.
Yes, but I'm saying there's no position from the party chairman, there's no position from SEC, there's no written communication to that effect, and therefore I want to say any decision that is taken could be in by the judgment of a given cadre at a given level, and that doesn't mean it's the official position. So somebody can overguide it at any level, that's okay, but official position must be in writing, and which I like to challenge my sister to give it to us here. Now, since she doesn't have one, I want to proceed as follows.
For me, I
Honorable
quoted
Mulongo is saying
Obua.
we should never quote any government
Me,
official
I
doesn't
quoted
write.
Obua, and he said it, and it's on the record.
I'm saying that if there is no written document signed by the chair of the party and also endorsed or from a decision of the SEC, for example.
The question there would be, who should the MPs listen to?
Yes, they
the
should listen.
electorate or the
They should,
party?
if there is any official position,
He's saying the
it should
whip
come
doesn't
from the
represent the
top
buying.
echelons
That's
of
what
the
Honorable
party.
Mulongo is saying.
Any party, even
The
if
whip
it is
is-
not,
was just saying reckless
whether it is,
statement.
I don't know where Dr. Pio
I'm not a
belongs
doctor.
to.
I'm not a doctor, please.
Yes,
Don't
whatever.
get me in that doctorate
maybe
Crap.
yes, or whatever. Yeah, but you cannot be crap. It's doctor's philosophy.
No,
Let's
there are
focus.
those-
Let's
there are those
focus.
who
Let's
are-
focus.
Excel.
Let's
appropriate
focus.
themselves the title. I
Yes.
don't want to be one.
So,
let's
yeah,
I
but
don't have a
but
PhD.
I'm sorry, I did not know
Dr.
that
Balan Baruga.
you are not one, and
Not even a witch doctor
and,
yet.
and maybe you are by other means doctor. But anyway, the issue is there is no official position from the highest echelon of NRM to that effect. And if the honorable Obua did provide that guidance, he did do that as a chief whip, and that cannot in any way tantamount to violation of existing rules of procedure and the laws governing the House. And I can tell you that the issue that is happening in Parliament is about the dynamics of Parliament of Uganda, and we have to follow the rules. It's like when you say, because there is a provision in the Constitution about power belongs to the people, you can only exercise those powers through the institutional, policy, and legal frameworks. So Parliament has the obligation to follow the rules of procedure that governs the activities in the House. So do not NRManize it, or make it nuponize it, or make it deepenize it. Please don't. This is about the House
You are about to
with
be
its
vulgar.
internal. I cannot take that route. This is about internal procedures of the House. So I think and that's why some NRM have managed to sign that. There are those who have not signed, depending on their judgment. And I want to say,
You can monopolize it.
you can also monopolize it. The issue is, if the honorable member from Masindi did actually say that, she was just being guided and advised or directed by electorate, which is within the laws of this country. You as a representative can be actually instructed by your people. So in that case, she's not just being forced. Forced meaning they came here, maybe herded her into the House and watched her side. There's nothing like that. She could have been convinced by the people for the reason they could have given her to sign. So in this case, the majority of the people who signed are actually NRM. You can look at the statistics. This tells you that NRM party and movement are adheres to the laws and believes in objectivity of the function of Parliament.
All right.
So whether the Speaker is at fault or the backbench commissioners are at fault, all the things will be subjected to the dynamics of the House.
All right.
It doesn't mean that NRM is blocking anyone. Unlike some party I know, who are pursuing certain narrow interests. That because
But why aren't you naming the party?
Well, because you do not name also you do not give me evidence of the document.
All right.
So some party, because they're pursuing some
quoted
targeted
Obua.
backbench MPs, so they are supporting it. But even the same group, factions of it, are not supporting it simply because. So, and that's why I'm calling upon all political parties to be objective.
All right.
Like some of us are.
Let's
Like
go
the
to-
NRM is in pursuing this matter, and allow Parliament to do what it deserves under its legal provisions and rules of procedure.
Kasozi Mulindwa writes in and says, greetings, Spectrum Extra. Mr. Opio is spot on. The president has mastered the use of paternalism. This Jaja Baskul narrative is a major reduction of the people's citizenship. The flip side, though, is that it should be really unbecoming of a Jaja to be fighting over power with his Baskulu with such brute force 40 years down the road. Honorable Mlongo, your arguments lack in depth. You are reactionary. You last talk hasn't issued any solution for what the young people are fighting for, or you give us news here. That's a comment there from Henry. Then Paul, listen again from
That's not
Chibuli.
fair. That's not fair.
Henry, take some ginger. It's good for nausea. After listening to Simon for so long.
Well, Paul from Chibuli, thank you for the show. Thank you for the Council Opio. If I were President Museveni, it is far better he runs his country, Uganda, without parliament. He better does away with those looters. Thank you. That's a comment from Paul. Let's bring in Mr. Nicholas Opio.
First of all, we must applaud the members of parliament who, in spite of all the odds, stood their ground, sought for signatures, and fought through this obstruction and got what they need on the floor of the House. I hope that there will be space for them to have a meaningful introspection into the allegations of corruption in Parliament, not just about the backbench commissioners. The second thing is that you have to take Honorable Odu's comment on the floor of the House seriously. Because I did speak to a senior member of the Buganda Kingdom when I saw a post about some people saying he must apologize. And I said, will the Buganda Kingdom join this demand for Odu to apologize? He said, no, absolutely not. In fact, we are very mad at one of our colleagues who has now made the term of Xtra associated with corruption. People can laugh, but it's a serious thing on the street. You know, street language
You
can
have
be
council
different.
On
Masihi,
TikTok.
please use on because he's also
Online platforms.
So on the street now, which
Ladit. It's like going to Acholi and you
it's a
you say
synonym
Ladit.
for those who are involved in corruption, thanks to one Ochitiva who has been embroiled in this kind of stuff. So it's a serious thing. But on a more serious note, there are attempts going on in Parliament now. First, even before the attempts, as the army garrisoned Parliament and stopped protesters from protesting about corruption, MPs were paying themselves what is called fuel facilitation allowance arrears. The least amount of money paid to an MP was 250 million shillings.
250 million
shillings. Others who got 300 million. That information in due
Those were
course.
the areas.
Areas.
They call them
Over
areas.
time.
They call them areas.
Cumulatively coming to that.
But just how tone deaf these people are, that people are outside fighting to
corruption.
come in to protest corruption. You're here sharing.
Well, if
When
there
the
are
army-
areas,
When the army
if
is
it
blocking
is
you,
areas, it means they were entitled, but they were not given on
you've,
time.
you've got to read the details of what is called areas to understand why this is a bastardization of that process and amounts to corruption.
Give us evidence.
Okay?
You're a lawyer.
Well, I will at an appropriate forum.
Table it.
At an appropriate forum, give
I
you
like
the
that.
evidence. But let the MPs deny, and then you will provide the evidence. And so that's happening in Parliament now. As this is happening, the reason we reached the signatures is partly because of pressure from the populace, but it is also what seems to be a compromise. There are suggestions that this debate must not be held in plenary. When the Deputy Speaker allowed this debate in the plenary, some people were really scared and didn't know where this was going to go. When Parliament was called off, it was called off at 1:58 p.m. when the bell calling MPs to go to the chamber was ringing. Because some individuals began to think that if the Deputy Speaker continued on that path, they had no idea where this was going to end. And so it seems that a compromise position has been reached, that this discussion will be held in the parliamentary conference hall, not on the plenary, away from public scrutiny. I think that we've got to keep an eye on that process so that we don't get into some sort of a process where it is opaque, it is not transparent, but seeking to protect those who have been accused of corruption. I think that...
Can I give you some information?
Please do so.
Very quickly.
The conference hall is talking about is much wider. If that parliament is in full attendance, people hardly even have where to sit. Most of them just stand. So if this matter is likely to attract full attendance, definitely the hall is a much better. And in any case, the information can never be blocked from coming out.
Well, you see, with the conference center, it's very easy for you to block out access.
So there's no
for
parliament,
the
there's no
media.
press gallery.
As long as
no
the-
press gallery.
There's no press
It
gallery.
is televised.
If people want to come to...
It's-
And that's what he's
difference is
saying.
the
It's
same.
likely not to be
It
televised.
will have to.
Well,
It's parliament.
so yeah, but thank you for that information. I hope that the suggestion to go to the conference hall, not on the floor of parliament, is not to obfuscate and have an opaque discussion about these issues. If it's about space, fantastic. I hope there's be enough transparency for everybody to see what's going on and hear, and most importantly, for this to be on the record. But Parliament finds itself in a very tricky situation. When the Speaker of Parliament is the one accused of corruption, will she chair the House? If the Deputy Speaker is the one who has been accused of corruption, we had a very unfortunate situation. The Speaker is being accused of stealing iron sheets, and she's presiding over a discussion over iron sheets.
Nick, I can give
in
you some
Parliament.
information
Please
briefly. The Speaker chaired the House when they were punishing a person who was accused of insulting her. And the Constitutional Court had no kind words for her conduct.
Yeah.
But she chaired the House, said, and she was sharing the house, and then
She was the prosecutor, the judge, and
the rules committee, Katuntu committee said he should apologize. Then someone on the floor said, no, he shouldn't even just apologize. He should be sent out. And then they cheered, and the speaker was smiling gleefully.
So that's the situation. I think for me that the allegations about Parliament warrant a judicial inquiry, not a parliamentary process where the speaker is going to chair. We have seen the way that she chairs the House. She can shut you out. But a judicial inquiry into corruption will even extend beyond the speaker and MPs. Because you have a clerk to Parliament who is supposed to be the accounting officer, the gatekeeper. You have staffers in Parliament who are supposed to be gatekeepers in this process. You have staff members of Parliament, like the spokesperson of Parliament, to whose account money was sent. You have drivers, you have escorts, relatives, friends, and in-laws. And so we've got to, if you want to rid Parliament of corruption, focus beyond the 4 backbench MPs and our good friend Owechitiwa, and do a thorough institutional surgery to rid it of corruption. Otherwise, this whole thing won't address the problem. If you just go to the floor, you pontificate, you express displeasure, and that's the end.
All right. Very quickly, in a few seconds, how do you see this matter ending? Very quickly, a few seconds.
Like I earlier mentioned, it will end up to be caught up in the politics, like we've seen that every contentious debate now, it's polarizing. Yes, politics is always polarizing. But in this particular, the 11th Parliament has, every time someone is accused of corruption, they come up, or any form of allegation, they come up with a blanketing defense of, no, it's not about diverting from the allegations.
All right.
Even the Sechikubo motion, many people have said, especially the impugned commissioners, that no, they're not fighting us, they're fighting the speaker in order to blanket the guilt.
Very quickly, Charity, in a few seconds.
Now, the unfortunate thing about the corruption campaign in Parliament is that even the opposition is divided against itself, because we have a leader of opposition who is being accused by people on social media that he took 1.7 billion. Of course, Joel has come out and defended himself. But I expect him to give us a better slate, because there are people on social media who still cannot believe, and I was asking Council Musisi earlier.
All right.
And there is also the other NRM people who still have tainted
I'm afraid with that we come to the end of Spectrum Xtra. Let me thank you, my dear panelists, for actually making time to be here to discuss these issues. We hope to reflect on them in the near future. We must also thank the listeners who have not only listened to us but also shared their views with us here to shape the discussion. Well, I've been your host, Kenneth Lukagandason. From me and the team here in studio, we wish you a good weekend.